Hello, hello. Welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer. Happy 2025. I hope everybody is starting the year out perfectly and great, and everything's just going well for your 2025 start. Whether you're an old listener, new listener, we do appreciate you being on the show, listening to Pharmaceutical Soccer. I, of course, am starting off 2025 with Clay Trainum and Valer Shabilla, as always. Look, it's the start, almost start to a new Nashville SC year. We're less than 50 days away from season starting, which is crazy. We were just talking about in the off, like, because schedules haven't come out yet, like players are probably going to Florida soon. Does it feel like there's been any sort of off season at all?
No, I mean the even the week of the holidays felt like there was stuff going on. Even the week of Christmas felt like something was going on because there was something going on. These sort of blockbuster trades from Nashville SC, whether it was getting rid of Shaq Moore or getting in Brugman. These are big names moving around, millions of gams either way going in and out. So all in all, it felt like a continuation of what happened last year. And I think a lot of it had to do with Nashville was a lot more proactive, which is something Clay talked about, I think, last episode. Nashville needs to be proactive because they can't afford otherwise. And we see those moves maybe earlier than usual, or maybe in the past they haven't really needed to make those moves to where now they absolutely need to because they finished 13th and it wasn't very good.
Oh, sorry. This was extremely rude of me. I apologize for getting too much into just Nashville SC talk before learning about what Clay and Valer did for the weekend. I apologize to Valer's girlfriend, Jessica, for not starting off with that weekend update. Valer, how was your weekend?
It is her favorite segment, and she might have not made it if she will turn it on if she will see that we talked about we talked about not that and maybe turned it off. So we'll see. No, it was not it was it was a boring weekend. Stayed home. Said girlfriend was sick, so had to stay home and kind of help out and we watched a lot of pop culture Jeopardy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Really interesting. Yeah. I'm not really the hugest like Jeopardy fan, I guess, but that was fun. Clay, you have thoughts?
I do. I watched like four episodes of it yesterday.
There you
It's
go. Me too.
yeah, it's funny because it's essentially watching Jeopardy where you know all the answers. And
For some people. Yeah.
so like Mary and I were just sitting there like because I play a lot of trivia, so it's like kind of all stuff that I'm used to hearing. So I was like, oh, this is what it must be like when, former show member Tim Sullivan watches real Jeopardy. Like so it's fun. My weekend was slightly more eventful. We had the my wife's family. We hosted Christmas at our house. Everyone that knows what's going on there can understand why Christmas might have been a little late this year. And then I I don't want to talk about the game, but we celebrated 10 years of the Nashville Evertonians on Saturday at the Lost Patty, which was really nice. And um, it's hard to get a lot of people to show up to watch a team that's been consistently in the bottom five of the Premier League. But we had 20, I think 25, 30 people show up to the Lost Patty to kind of celebrate that. And that was a good time for me, even if the game wasn't great. Um, it's always good to see a lot of people sticking with their team through like bad moments. And I honestly wish that there were more, not power, you know, big six or seven, whatever teams. I wish that there were more fan groups around the area because I feel like if other people started up fan groups, they would find people that would want to meet up. And I think that that's good for the game in Nashville, and I think that's just good for soccer in general that um, people get together and support something. So anyway, that's me being sentimental about this thing I started that obviously is self-serving, but I do think that that was a good time. And then yesterday was just a lot of hangout time for the most part. I worked a game at Vanderbilt, and other than that, just kind of chilled.
We have never been sentimental on this show about anything ever, Clay. So that was a first. So appreciate
We're
you.
definitely sentimental about a bad soccer team on here an awful lot
I know,
last year.
absolutely. Yeah, my weekend was good. I started playing a lot of Marvel Rivals, which has been fun. It's a good game, fun game to play. Of course, I watched some. Yes, Clay.
I just wanted to say, because I know that you're a board game person, we did get Challengers board game, which is basically war, like old school, like war with the card deck. Recommend that. So we got that over the weekend. So we played a couple of rounds of that.
Oh
So
yeah,
shout out.
when I was at a gaming convention, a board gaming convention a few weeks early in December, me and friend of the show Jerry were at this board game convention. We're with a bunch of other board games, and we were playing War. It was a great time, but also watched some NFL football. Unfortunately, my Vikings did not take care of business last night, so we are probably not going to take care of business for playoffs. But that's okay. Life happens. Look, but big news out of the NFL, Titans secure the first round number one pick in the NFL. And obviously, like, I don't want to get into like a Titans like I don't want to get into like a Titan. We're not a Titans podcast, obviously. Don't want to get into that. What would be the Nashville SC like equivalent of getting a first round pick? Like, was this last season it where it was just terrible? And so this is what is happening is that we're now dealing with what would be the equivalent to that and in the Nashville SC perspective?
There is no equivalent to getting the number one pick. However, if you want to say a terrible season, the equivalent would be to get a DP that you bench the first year, and then he plays towards the end, shows promising things, maybe an Ake Loba situation, because you get him kind of halfway through the year, and you're like, you know what? He's gonna kill it next year. This is his year. You build a team around him. You get a new coach around him to coach him. This coach has been so good offensively with the quarterbacks, which, whatever. That didn't happen for Nashville SC. But if they were to do that around Ake Loba, and then he comes in the next season and has the Ake Loba season that we're familiar with, aka Will Levis season that we're familiar with, that's what it feels like. And I feel like Nashville SC fans have felt that portion of it, but not the whole team being bad, which is what the Titans fans are feeling at the moment.
What if you break all the rules to have way more players on high wages than you should, and then it doesn't work out like catastrophically so, and then you get the best player who's ever played just handed to you? Like, what if that were to happen? Maybe that would be a great thing that could have happened to Nashville.
All I heard was Valaire just kind of bringing up us in that moment as we've now moved to a more offensive minded coach and we're building stuff around the DPs that we have. So it could go. All right. Well, that feels good.
We've gone deep on this metaphor. Anyway, Nashville SC is in about to go to preseason.
Oh, I'm
Well, I do
sorry.
think I think it's important to note where Nashville SC is within this market at the moment, right? Because we talk about this and we never really talk about the big picture often in terms of the market and where it stands. But when you have two underperforming teams that are the only other two first division professional teams, the Preds and the Titans, it does leave a hole for Nashville SC to shine a little bit higher. Now that doesn't mean that two teams can be good at the same time in this market. It's a big enough market. Nashville SC has its fair share of it. What it does mean is that if Nashville SC finds some success, gets a couple wins, that atmosphere will change immediately. And we've seen it season after season because Nashville likes a winner, first and foremost. And look, the Titans tickets yesterday were going for $2. You
I'd
know what
say
I
I've
mean?
been to Open Cup matches with more Titans fans than there were at Nissan
Yeah,
yesterday.
and that's tough. That's tough. And the other thing is that Nashville SC needs this more than the other two teams, in all honesty. The other two teams have a more established fan base, obviously because they've been here longer, but also because they've had some success. Nashville SC's success is still brand new. This is a brand new team. Even their stadium is newer than the other two, right? So, like, I think Nashville needs it more than the other two in terms of fans going there. Soccer in general is not the same level as NFL or NHL. And I think what we've seen from this market is the potential for soccer to be at least at the same level as NHL, simply because of what we've seen with our own eyes.
Well, it's not only that, is the city wants a winner. And I think like it was it was easy to make the assumption 8 or 9 years ago that Nashville was a Pred city. It felt like the Preds dominated everything. You saw more people in Preds jerseys than anything else. You saw more people in Preds gear than Titans gear. Preds talk was 1A for the sports page more often than not. And I was like, yeah, of course it is, because the Titans are bad. Because when all things being equal, if all the teams are good, the Titans kind of run everything, which is just the way it is. It's the NFL. That's the way it works. But the Preds didn't used to be that way. The reason the Preds were elevated, the reason why the Preds created this fan base, went from some of the cheapest tickets to the league and some of the most expensive tickets to the league, is because they took advantage when the Titans were down. They made a Stanley Cup run. They were a consistent playoff team, things like that. So that's the advantage. That is the potential opportunity that Nashville SC finds itself in now. If Nashville SC were to have a good season, like more than just the League Cup final run, but like to have a good season, fun, fun performances, make a deep run in the MLS Cup playoffs, there is an opportunity there to really push this thing into that Preds, atmosphere to really elevate it because the other two teams aren't doing well. And
Well,
that's what the Preds did. That's how they got there. I mean, there's a lot of other moving parts. Like, I'm not oversimplifying things, but the main reason I think to the casual Nashville sports fan, the Preds were elevated up to being a big team in the city is because they did it when the Titans were down. Now the Preds and the Titans are down. Nashville SC's coming off a down season. There's an opportunity there that hasn't really fully presented itself for NSC to take advantage of.
Well, and I think it was different too in USL when we were just excited for soccer to be here, right? It was just, it didn't matter if we made the playoffs. It didn't necessarily, like, we wanted performances, but the soccer fans that were going to be there were going to be the soccer fans. And we've talked about this multiple times about Nashville being a soccer city or not, where it doesn't necessarily seem like it has that congruent fan base yet. But I mean, like you both said, results matter, especially when you're trying to build this type of city and this type of atmosphere where, heck, I mean, even just our show in general, like the amount of more like people we have listening to the show. Heck, we were on the radio at one point. The more amount of people that are listening and paying attention is because of the fact of when the team wins and there are things around it. People do want to pay attention to what is going on and what is happening. So I mean, I think Nashville, look, and we're going to talk about it in the next segment. This is one of the first times that Nashville has been a part of some kind of bigger rumors and different rumors when it comes to players coming in, taking some risks. I mean, we're getting to the point where it is silly season right now, in terms of the off season and kind of what's happening. Blair, you want to like unmute yourself like a normal host would do.
Right, right. Let's cut that out. No. I think I just wanted to kind of give a PSA because, well, Clay had his hand up, so I was just waiting for him to say something.
Well,
But
he was clearly moving the conversation on. I was going to
okay,
say
okay, yeah,
in
keep going.
2021, Nashville was relevant enough that we actually had multiple episodes in the same week on ESPN radio
Yeah,
during
that's
the
wild.
playoffs.
Um, no, but in all honesty, I think Nashville has just by being part of this global market of soccer, they have gained more popularity within it, and you see players and managers and all sorts of people linked to Nashville, where the first year or two just wasn't gonna happen, just because people didn't know who Nashville were. Um, but now we're seeing more and more links. We're seeing more and more rumors coming from Europe, coming from Asia, Africa, wherever, right? There are all these rumors, South America. Um, what I want to say is something that every single sort of like soccer fan through and through has gone through and has had this sort of experience go through when you first start getting into the game and to now. Just be careful where you get your information from and pay attention to the wording used, the source you're getting the information from, and who actually is this information, intended to, right? So there are a lot of there's gonna be a lot of like Nashville interested in X player, which generally means nothing. I am interested in so many things in my life that doesn't mean anything. There's gonna be a lot of reports coming from people with, a couple thousand Twitter followers or whatever, or a couple hundred Twitter followers, thinking that they have some sort of you know, some sort of actual reporting or actual sourcing that's just made up. There's going to be a lot of reports that are legitimate in terms of that they are coming from the player's side or the agent's side, trying to raise a player's salary or value within the market. It's literally endless, and there's a lot. And if you're a fan of a Premier League team or a team in La Liga or something along those lines, you'll see those reports like 7, 10 report rumors a day come through. For Nashville, maybe it's like one or two a week, right? Because it is a smaller market. What I want to make sure is that people are kind of double checking and triple checking their sources before you get too high or too low on a certain player. In terms of actual really good sources to get these type of information from. Obviously, me. I'm just kidding. But you can go to trusted journalists that are around, whether it's Tom Bogert or in our local market. Ben Wright, obviously, we talk about him a good amount, and we've talked with him. He's a friend of the show. But even I was joking about myself, but I'm only gonna reshare things that I think have some actual validity to them. I'm never gonna sit down and just retweet some random rumor that somebody created in Honduras, which we will get to in the second segment. Or I will retweet that or share that, noting that this is a rumor and not a report, which is different. A rumor is just doesn't have as much sourcing, and we don't know if it's valid or not.
And it is also worth remembering with uh like when you take England, for example, like the whole transfer window was created specifically to sell newspapers. Like that's the purpose of it. With all of the rules that exist now, certain teams don't seem to have to play by all of these rules, but with all the rules that exist, there's no way that some of the things that get thrown out are even possible.
Yeah.
And with the secret sort of inner workings of MLS to begin with, things that seem logically possible may also not be possible. So it is very worth remembering, like, your MLS sources are your best sources. And I can't tell you how many times a lot of people bank on the word of Fabrizio Romano. I can't tell you how many times he's been like hilariously incorrect when it comes to MLS because he has no idea. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's a different, it's a completely different system.
A couple things. One, Valer, next time you do go on something like that specifically, let's make sure the next segment isn't specifically talking about rumors and other things. That would be terrific.
Well, I got one example of a rumor, one example of a report.
That's fair.
Just trying to make my point.
Also, number two, is this the first Valer it out of 2025, and we just did not
yes,
we did not
is.
give it the
Officially.
proper introduction?
I have not. We need like a little theme song, man.
I know we do need it. Actually, we should get something created. If anybody wants to create a theme song for Valer it out, that would be great for 2025.
Yeah,
would
please.
love you, Omari. You also are good at stuff like this. Create something that would be.
No, 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 no. Blare it out, blare it out, blare it out.
We'll consider it.
All right, we are going to get into some of these rumors we're talking about. We want to talk about as well what to expect from Nashville SC in terms of its floor and ceiling, and some other couple big moves around the league. And we're going to do that next, right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at Pharma Soccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you did not know, we do have a Patreon. Obviously, the 2025 Nashville SC season is just getting underway. Starting to, and we'll be here to cover all of it, any news that happens. So if you want to join the Patreon, we would really appreciate it. It's $5 a month, and you'll get shouted out on the show, like our two new Patreon members that did sign up over the past couple weeks. They're ready to go for the 2025 season, and those people are Valer.
Shout out to Jared and Titan Bronco. Both of you have joined our Patreon, and we really appreciate it. Be like these two. Join our Patreon and help us keep this show going.
And you can also visit pharmasoccer.com and visit our store, buy a shirt. There's lots of shirts that are available, lots of styles. We will I can't say what I will do if I see a Pharma soccer shirt in the wild that's not being worn by someone I know personally, but chances are they're getting an unsolicited hug. So I'll ask for consent first. Let me clarify. But if I see a Pharma soccer shirt at a game, I'm gonna want to hug you. So just know that. So I hope that that's a selling point. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm not sure if it is, but please visit pharmasoccer.com and buy a shirt.
Also, I am very excited. We do have some breaking news. Finally, Nashville has decided to release a report of a trade happening before the show has started. So then it's not literally the next 5 hours or the next day where it is reported and we don't get to talk about it. Nashville has acquired money for spots.
Well, not real money. Let's be clear. Nashville has acquired
Nashville's acquired
three.
fake money for fake spots.
They have acquired $350,000 in GAM, general allocation money, in exchange of two international spots. Again, international spots do not mean that international players occupy those. It means players who do not have a citizenship or a green card of the United States occupy those. So somebody like Hani Mukhtar doesn't occupy an international spot, even though he is international. So before you get your pitchforks out and go yelling, it's not that big of a deal. We knew they were going to trade these spots out. The current Nashville SC roster does have Jacob Schaffelberg, who is occupying one for being Canadian. However, should be, and emphasis on should, in the near future that Jacob Schaffelberg will no longer require one as he is in the process of getting his green card. So, other than that, Nashville still has one available international slot outside of the ones they traded and the ones that are currently occupying. So, that they can still make at least one signing that will require one. And like I said, Jacob Schaffelberg should be turning into domestic player fairly soon, which will make another spot available. And in all honesty, these spots, if push comes to shove, Nashville can go and buy one from any team when needed. So it's better than just leaving them on your roster empty, if especially if you know you're not going to use them. So you generate some sort of GAM out of them. So that's the move Nashville has done for years, and they're going to do it again this year.
Absolutely. Wanted to bring up this actual signing of fake money before getting into some other reports. Valair was 100% correct in the first segment. Make sure you're triple checking your sources. Make sure you're looking at official of things coming out. He is a great source for that. Ben Wright, a great source for that. Like I said, Tom Bogart, also a great source for a lot of those official things coming through.
Reminder, Sam Surge. That came from this show right here, and that was a lot of the heavy lifting by Valair. And of course, Steven with his miraculous reveal last year via Google.
Of Patrick Yazbak being official with
Yes.
Nashville.
So quality journalists on this show.
Look, absolutely. Oh, we're all about the quality, but I do think it is fun for just because we haven't seen a ton of this from the Nashville side, right? When it comes to either young players, players abroad, Nashville, it does show in the rumors and stuff like that. It does show that Nashville's name is being put out there for some of these names, like some of these cool names that are coming through, and they are doing the scouting and due diligence needed for these rumors to be even talked about as rumors officially. It's not something that we've necessarily seen, as hot and heavy as it is now. So you know that this team is putting in the work and it is fun to see. So we did want to address and talk about some of these rumors before we kind of talk about this team specifically. I think we start with the smaller. I don't think this one is as important as the other one, but I think Brian Acosta is the one that we start with first.
Yeah, I mean it's not only not as important, but I just wanted to give an example of a rumor that kind of came about a couple of weeks ago. been kind of tweeted or kind of reported on a couple from a couple people here and there, but nothing substantial, nothing from a source that is definitive. Um, for me, this move specifically makes no sense for Nashville SC. They're trying to get younger. They're trying to make the midfield better. Brian Acosta is I don't see how he's the player for Nashville SC at the moment. He would need a pretty big salary. He's been jumping around teams pretty much for the last 4 or 5 years. It's not a signing that makes a ton of sense for me. But again, this is a rumor. This is not something that's been confirmed by journalists, at least not from the MLS side. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. I just wanted to explore that Nashville does need a midfielder. Brian Acosta has MLS experience with Dallas and Colorado, and I think Portland actually too. He played there before going to Turkey, and now he's a Honduran player. He's back in Honduras playing, and has already announced that he will not be continuing with his club in Honduras. He's 31 years old, midfielder. Like I said, he never really seemed like light the world on fire when he was in MLS, and his salary was around 700,000. So to me, if you could do something like that, you would probably stick with Godoy. But he would probably come in at a much cheaper salary if he was to come into Nashville. Again, doesn't make a ton of sense. I'm not going to give it more time than I have already given it.
Yeah, I was going to say you were able to do a decent amount of time specifically on that one, so I kind of appreciate it. And then the next player is one that I'm extremely excited for. I'm sure Valer is even more excited for it.
I want you to pronounce it though.
No, I was going to bring up that I did not want to even try. I was going to make the joke that Ahmed Kassim.
Close enough. Um, so this one is a lot more. It's coming from Tom Bogert of Give Me Sports. It's also coming from a Swedish journalist out in Sweden. Forgot his name, so I'm gonna have to apologize. But both of those, especially Tom, is very, very reliable. But here is the thing: when I talked about wording in the first segment, the wording here is that Nashville have submitted a bid. Doesn't mean that transfer is happening. It simply means that Nashville have talked to the club and said, "Here's what we're willing to offer you." That's all. Now here's how you pronounce his name. If you want to pronounce his name the way his father pronounces his name, Ahmed Qasim. If you want to pronounce his name how most people will pronounce it, where he plays and where he'll come, is like Steven said it. So just rewind back. Yes.
Just on a personal note, how excited did you get about an Iraqi
Potential Iraqi.
potential potential Iraqi Swede playing for Nashville? That checks multiple boxes for one Valer Shavilla.
Multiple.
Yeah, I mean the connections here. He has a Swedish citizenship, a Danish citizenship. I have a sister who lives in each country. He his family's from Iraq. I'm from there, so and will be coming to Nashville, where I currently live for the last 16 years of my life. So, yeah, pretty exciting stuff altogether. But outside of all of that, he's a very talented winger, 21-year-old, would definitely occupy one of those U22 spots, which means his cap hit would be a lot lower than anyone of his price. The rumor is that Nashville has offered anywhere between 2.7 to 3.6 million, which is a pretty substantial fee for a 21-year-old. But again, he's eligible to play for multiple national teams. He's played with the Swedish youth national team and is looking to break through there into the Swedish national team. The report out of Sweden is that he is not sure about the move, while the club is willing to sell. Elfsborg is the club. If they do sell him for that amount, he would definitely be one of the highest exports from that club. So I think the club is all for it. I think Nashville needs to do some convincing for the player himself. And one of the ways they can do that is looking at the market around them and how MLS in general has become a selling league. So when you look at players even like Alistair Johnson, who was with Nashville, for example, he came to MLS, played really well, got his deal, and left. And that's just one example, right? Obviously, the most bright example out of all of those is Miguel Almiron, who played a couple years in MLS, got his value up, and got his big move to Newcastle. Those will be the things that Nashville will be whispering in his ears to convince him to come here. But again, when you're playing in Europe already, it's going to be harder than say somebody playing in Colombia or Ecuador or any of those other countries.
Well, and also the selling point is that you can get paid playing in MLS. And like obviously it's not Sweden necessarily, but well it's not Sweden, period. But like Hani Mukhtar comes from a Scandinavian league to MLS. Now Hani Mukhtar makes a significantly, hefty amount of money playing in MLS as a star in MLS. And that will be enticing to anyone. I mean, I know that a 21-year-old is probably thinking more about, you know, what's the future, like where am I gonna play on the big stage, and there's that outlet that is available still, but there's also, that's a life-changing amount of money that if it comes off playing in MLS, that he could set up his family for a generation or so, by having a successful career in the United States, which is enticing. It gets lost in the fold because a lot of the ways that Americans talk about their national team stars wanting them to go to Europe, but there's multiple factors at play in every decision like that.
Yeah, and I want to say that we are seeing more of these Scandinavian rumors and reports because Nashville has made a couple signings from there. So Patrick Yazbek and Taxath both came from those leagues in Scandinavia, and obviously Hani Mukhtar came from the Danish league. So because of that, you'll see certain type of players are going to be linked with Nashville SC. Now, this one we know is confirmed and reported by Tom Bogert, but we'll see a lot of others come through. For example, when Arsenal needed a striker, like every striker in the world, they was linked with Arsenal. And same thing with all these sort of. There's a certain type of player that these players are going to go for, that these reports are going to go for. So any second division German team that has a player that want to sell, they'll probably link them with the Philadelphia Union, simply because that's where they've looked in the past, and so on and so forth. Same thing with St. Louis. So I do want to note that he can play for 5 different national teams. So he has the Swedish citizenship because he was born there. His mother has a Danish citizenship, which means he has one. His mother is of Palestinian. Uh, uh, no, sorry, his mother is of Iraqi. She's from Iraq. She has Iraqi citizenship, but of Palestinian ancestors. His father is Jordanian. So Jordan, Palestine, Iraq, Sweden, Denmark. He's eligible for all 5. He has only played for Swedish under 21 teams, which means that he's eligible to play for any of those. He's not limited. But he seems like he's set on Sweden, and that's kind of his goal.
Do you think does this kind of Nordic infusion, this kind of idea, does it make you happy, or is it something that is a little bit scary to you that it seems like all of the players that we are assigning abroad are just coming from one area?
Well, I think the main thing is that it's not all the player signings, which makes me a little bit more optimistic about it. I mean, currently we have technically seen Nashville make these moves for only 2 of the players. I mean, you can count Hani Mukhtar, but that was 5, 6 years ago. We can't really. So what we've seen is Nashville make these moves for 2 players, one of which we've seen play, and jury's still out on Patrick Yazbek. But I think overall, I think everybody can see why that move was made, and there's potential there. The other one is we haven't seen play. So I'm kind of withholding judgment until I see what they can do on the pitch. I would like to not judge a player or assess a player based on where they're coming from or what country they're from, because that's something we all get annoyed about when we see it happen, like in the Premier League. Whenever an American player is signed, or a player from a country that's not as big on soccer as the UK, generally there's this sort of immediate hate or immediate discredit. They discredit them in any way they can. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to make that. I will say that one of the reasons for this is because the Scandinavian leagues have a similar schedule to MLS. They also have a break currently, so it's easier to get a player out of his team before the season starts rather than mid-season. So that's one of the reasons for it. And the other thing is that these are young, talented players, which means there's a sell-on value going forward. In a year or two, they can probably sell him back to those Scandinavian leagues and either make a profit or retain some of that money back.
But what we do know is the players that we do have now. Obviously, as we talked about, there are a couple that have been signed from the Nordic regions. We know what players that we do have, even with all these rumors flying around. So, with that kind of Clay, I want to start with you. What what kind of signings do you think that Nashville SC will make in the next month or so before kind of just this preseason starts? Um, and how many, like, what are they going to be?
Well, I think the most pressing signing that they're going to be looking for, I mean, they're going to probably look at both fullback positions. Not necessarily for a starter, although I'm sure they would take one. But they need depth on at the fullback positions. Uh, Obviously moving Shaq Moron, I think that they rate Julian Gaines. I think that that is their plan, but they're going to need someone else there. And currently we have uh Bauer as a backup right back. So I think that you have to look at that. They need a depth signing. They also need a depth signing at center backs, which sounds crazy because there were like six of them last year. But right now, uh, if Walker Zimmerman goes on international duty or there's an injury, suddenly they're very thin at center back. So I expect there to be a signing there. I don't expect it to be a big signing necessarily, but I certainly expect depth signings there. I honestly think that they're that's what we're looking at right now is more depth. I think that there's a lot of money that has been committed because of the gambles that they're taking on a guy like Bregman, on the fact that the GAM was kind of depleted over the last few years, although the 350 that they acquired today will be helpful. Um, I would expect another signing and another attacking signing of some sort, just because we all know that they could use a little bit more firepower on that front. But I wouldn't be I'd be surprised if there's not a couple more signings before they go to Florida. I expected there to be at least a couple more, maybe three or four, before they go to Florida. But I'm not expecting anything earth shattering. I think the big signings that we've seen so far are expected if they get this a couple of these reported or rumored signings across the board. I think that even I think they're probably set if that happens. I'm not going to bank on that because how many times have we seen a Nashville reported signing saga go into the summer? And it's been several times that we've seen that. And so I'm not going to bank on another big one happening before it's all said and done. But I do think that if they're able to get one across, this has been nothing but a very successful off season for getting the team ready. Uh, I know we have another question about floor and ceiling, so we'll get to that in a minute. But I'm just expecting, for the most part, depth signings, and maybe this reported signing happens. Maybe it doesn't happen till the summer.
Well, and with that, I want to start with what we have now and what we do know, just based on where teams currently are, even in MLS. I want to kind of get a range before we get a specific spot, and where I think we have a lot of stuff to figure out in the offseason, figuring out where Nashville is. So I kind of want to gauge right now where the roster is. How low do you think Nashville? How much lower Nashville can go? Do you think right now, based on the signings that have been made, our current roster, is this team going to finish? Does this team have the potential to finish in a lower spot than it did this season?
Yes, there's always that potential, but I think what another way to kind of phrase that is probably to talk about how Nashville built their team the last few years versus how Nashville are building their team right now. So what we have seen in the past few years is a high floor with a fairly low ceiling. And that is something that has changed for Nashville this season. Coming into 2025, Nashville have raised their ceiling based on the young players they've signed, based on having three DPs that are established within the league at this point, based on the moves they're making. This is a fairly high ceiling team. You can look at it, you can make a case for a lot of these players that if they hit their stride, if things work well, they will improve and they will improve greatly. from what they did in 2024. That said, by raising that ceiling, they have also lowered their floor. So in the past, the Nashville's floor was making the playoffs. That was literally the floor, and the ceiling was like, maybe win a couple games. Now there is the possibility, there is a way you can see this team going pretty deep in the playoffs, but there's a possibility things don't work out, and we have a repeat of 2024. So it's a little bit more high risk, high reward type of thing. But it's also something that needed to happen because you can only play that safe card of, we're an expansion team. We're going to make the playoffs and see what happens. You can only play that so much before fans are demanding more, before ownership is demanding more, before just overall this league is going to pass you by because every other team around is getting better and better. So this is logically the first time we've seen Nashville SC actually rebuild into something new and something we aren't familiar with. So it comes with excitement, but it also comes with a lot of risk. We'll see how it goes.
And on that point, I think it's worth remembering, like when the season ended, what we asked for was that the team take a risk to try and do something. And we expected that they might, because I don't necessarily think Mike Jacobs was on a super hot seat, but it was feeling a little bit warm at the end of last season. And so he's got to change the way that things operate. He's got to do something different. He's got to change it up to prove, that he can do the job of rebuilding the team. And because of that, I think that these are all calculated risks, but they are risks. But if they all come off, if Bregman has a sort of return to form after a kind of a setback in form uh last season, if Randall Leal plays more than like 15 minutes, like these are two things that if both of those come off, you're looking at a Nashville ceiling that is near the top of the conference because those are two DP level players in theory that you're adding to the mix. And so that's where kind of, in addition to a new style and all this stuff, that's where this high ceiling idea comes from, is that the talent on this team you look at and say that is a pretty good MLS team. Now, the other side that's kind of hard to talk about because he is a pretty popular guy so far is that BJ Callahan's still learning how to do the job. And we don't know for sure that he can. And I don't mean that in a negative, like not backing him sort of way. Like I said at the start, when he got hired, he is the prototypical MLS coaching hire. You hired the assistant from the national team. It's happened a bunch of times. Sometimes that assistant is Jesse Marsh. Sometimes that assistant is Anthony Hudson. And so, like, those are that's a pretty big gap in ability there. Now, I think that Callahan's resume with Philadelphia Union is pretty good. I think obviously he did well with the national team, especially when he was an interim head coach. But this is his first go around club coaching, and he made some pretty costly mistakes towards the end of last season in some of those matches. And you have to hope that he learns from them. And if he does, and if he sort of becomes the manager that we hope that he can be, that takes the ceiling even higher. But there is the inverse of that, of course. So I'm really excited to see where we actually stand on this roster and this team and this coaching staff, but I really don't know. And this is the first time I've entered a season not knowing in quite a while about an SC.
Yeah, and it's part of the reason why I don't think making like predictions of where we think Nashville is going to finish is appropriate right now, because I think we still have kind of a month or so of like getting in players, depth pieces, trying to figure out that fullback position of where Nashville is going to be before we can actually make that kind of, prediction of where we believe that Nashville is going to be. So that's why I kind of wanted to offer it in that standpoint. So I appreciate both Clay and Valair of just dealing with my shenanigans and answering the questions that I put out there. Look, we have some plugs. We have I don't know. I don't have a prediction set up. Do you guys want to make your own prediction for? Do you know what? Screw it. No prediction. Just plugs and call it a day.
Yeah, let's get it done.
Sweet, Valair.
Yeah, go to valer.bsky.com or at Valer Shabilla on Twitter or Instagram, or TikTok or YouTube or any of those really. I appreciate all the support that you've shown me throughout last year, and would appreciate more support coming my way as I continue to um, present to you all the National SC news and analysis that your heart desires. For the show, we're very thankful for everybody who listens, of course. If you don't mind, go on Apple or Spotify or wherever you're listening right now and just hit that 5 stars real quick. And as an added bonus, if you do that on Apple and write a little review, we'll read it right here on the show as long as it's a 5 star review. So thank you and Happy New Year.
Like,
And you can follow me at Clay Lassol on Blue Sky, Twitter, and Instagram. And check out the National Soccer Archive. Still working on getting all of last year's information up, but hopefully that'll happen in the next couple weeks. And if you have items that you'd like to donate to the National Soccer Archive, the physical archive exists at Vanderbilt University. So please reach out to me on one of those, and we'll get you all set up to donate. Thank you.
at PH Stephen HD on all of my social medias, but follow Clay and Valaire. They do a lot cooler stuff than I do. I am just here to get you through the show. So follow them, but if you want to follow me as well, you can do that. Again, thank you so much for listening to the show. We appreciate it. Go check out our Patreon. Go leave a 5-star review on iTunes. We'll be back next week probably to talk about more soccer news. There's probably more stuff that's going to happen, so we will be back and would love for you to listen. So we're going to really starting to get going with the 2025 season. So thank you again so much for listening. We truly appreciate it and hope you have a great rest of your week.